In the silence of the night, Moscow slept under a blanket of calm, unaware of what was about to unfold. A faint hum stirred above the rooftops, growing louder with every second. Then came the sirens, slicing through the darkness, followed by flashes of light that turned the sky into a battlefield. Windows rattled, shadows scattered, and fear crept into every corner. What began as a distant sound became a storm of fire sweeping across the capital. For the first time, Moscow's illusion of safety was shattered, replaced by a chilling truth: nowhere was beyond reach. The strike began with precision. At 3 a.m., dozens of small aircraft cut across the sky, each one guided toward its mark. Their engines buzzed like a swarm of insects, impossible to ignore. Residents looked upward and saw dots of light moving in strange patterns, some racing low above the rooftops, others weaving higher through the clouds. Within seconds, the first explosions broke the quiet, sending shockwaves across the city. The attack was not limited to the outskirts. Drones slipped deep into the center of Moscow, where government buildings, office towers, and crowded neighborhoods stood side by side. Fireballs lit up entire blocks as glass shattered, and alarms wailed from cars struck by falling debris. Officials claimed the defenses were holding, yet flashes of failed interceptions painted another picture. Some drones were torn apart in the air, but others made it through, hitting targets with frightening accuracy. For those awake, the sight was surreal. For those just waking, it was pure confusion. The first wave lasted only minutes, but it was enough to leave thousands stunned. Moscow, a city long considered untouchable, had felt the sting of an organized assault that came without warning. When the first blasts faded, the damage became visible. Streets that had been silent minutes earlier turned into corridors of panic. Flames rose from parked cars, their fuel tanks bursting in sharp bursts that echoed through alleys. Smoke drifted between buildings, filling stairwells and choking the air. Families rushed outside, still half-dressed from sleep. Some carried children wrapped in blankets. Others clutched pets or small bags of belongings. Broken glass covered sidewalks, crunching under every step. Doors hung loose from their hinges, while apartment walls showed cracks from the shock waves. The familiar comfort of home was replaced by fear. Emergency sirens filled the night, yet help was slow to arrive. Fire crews struggled to reach narrow streets blocked by debris. Ambulances pushed past stalled traffic as people tried to escape the worst-hit areas. Residents shouted names into the chaos, searching for loved ones lost in the confusion. Videos filmed by phones showed the city in disarray, flames licking at apartment fronts, smoke climbing above rooftops, and terrified voices echoing behind the camera. Even those not directly struck felt the tremors of nearby blasts. The fear was not only of destruction, but of unpredictability. Nobody knew where the next drone would fall. The streets of Moscow no longer resembled a capital at peace. They carried the marks of sudden war, a reminder that safety could vanish in the blink of an eye. The impact of the strike reached far beyond burning streets. Within an hour, Moscow's airports fell silent. Vnukovo, Domodedovo, and Sheremetyevo all announced sudden closures. Terminals that usually pulsed with the movement of thousands became crowded waiting halls where no flights departed. Pilots were ordered to circle or divert. Planes full of passengers landed in distant cities, leaving families stranded far from home. Those already inside the terminals stared at screens filled with cancellations and delays. Confusion spread as announcements repeated with little explanation. For a city that depends on constant air traffic, the halt was devastating. More than 100 flights were disrupted in a single night. Airlines scrambled to cover fuel costs and rebook passengers, while businesses lost critical cargo shipments. The shock rippled through the economy as quickly as it spread through travelers. But the financial loss was only part of the blow. The closures carried a heavy message. Moscow, which had long claimed control of its skies, could not keep them safe. For many, the silence in the airports felt louder than the explosions outside. It was a reminder that even lifelines of the capital could be severed in an instant. The strike on Moscow was not random. It was built on careful planning and unusual methods. Instead of sending a few drones, Ukraine launched them in groups, coming from many directions at once. Some flew low, hugging the ground to stay hidden, while others approached from higher paths. This forced Russian defenses to split their focus, unsure which wave carried the real danger. Decoys were also part of the plan. Certain drones acted as bait, drawing fire, and forcing missile systems to waste expensive interceptors. Behind them, other drones slipped through the gaps and continued toward their targets. It was a simple idea, but one that tested even the most advanced weapons. Electronic disruption added another layer. Signals jammed radars and confused communication between defense units. For brief moments, operators lost track of what was real and what was not. In those seconds, drones crossed lines that were supposed to be secure. The result revealed a truth few expected. Systems like the S-400, once shown as unbreakable, could not stop everything. A handful of cheap aircraft had exposed weaknesses in weapons worth millions. For Ukraine, this was more than a strike. It was proof that creativity could rival firepower. As smoke still hung over Moscow, another battle was already unfolding. This one was not fought with drones or missiles, but with words and images. Officials rushed to announce that the city was safe, insisting that defenses had stopped most of the attack. State television repeated the same message, showing calm streets and reassuring voices. But outside, people saw something different. Videos filmed on phones spread quickly online, burning cars, shattered apartments, and families running through smoke. The contrast between what residents witnessed and what they heard on television was impossible to ignore. Authorities tried to silence those clips. Accounts were taken down, posts deleted, and warnings issued. Yet the images had already spread too far. For many Russians, this gap between lived experience and official claims deepened mistrust. Controlling the story became as important as repairing the damage. Admitting that drones reached the city center would weaken the image of strength that leaders depended on. So denial became the chosen weapon. But the more people saw with their own eyes, the harder it became to believe the words repeated on their screens. The destruction was easy to see in broken windows and burned-out cars, but the deeper costs unfolded slowly. Small businesses near the blast sites were among the first to feel it. Shops closed their doors, deliveries stopped, and customers stayed home out of fear. A single night of chaos was enough to cut earnings in half for many owners. Public services carried new burdens as well. Hospitals treated civilians injured by debris, while fire crews worked without pause to control blazes in several districts. Extra shifts, damaged equipment, and the exhaustion of staff created expenses that would not appear in official reports, but were felt across the city. Families adjusted their lives in quiet ways. Parents kept children home, fearing crowded schools or metro stations could be hit next. Workers avoided central districts, slowing offices already struggling with shortages. Even those untouched by flames carried the weight of uncertainty. Numbers could measure financial loss, but not the fear that spread through daily routines. Moscow had been shaken, not only by explosions, but by a new awareness. The war could reach them at any time, and no system could fully shield them. The strike was not only about damage, it carried a clear message aimed at both Russia and the wider world. By reaching the heart of Moscow, Ukraine showed that distance was no barrier and that even the most guarded capital could be touched. For President Putin, the symbolism cut deep. He had long promised that the homeland was safe, yet explosions across central districts told another story. Each drone that slipped through weakened the image of Moscow as untouchable. The raid also spoke to Russia's elite. Banks, corporations, and ministries located in the capital saw fire close to their offices. It was a warning that the benefits of war come with risks at home. Beyond the borders, Ukraine signaled determination. Even under pressure not to escalate, it proved it was willing to take bold steps to defend itself. The effects of the strike spread quickly beyond Russia. In Europe, some leaders praised Ukraine for daring to hit back, while others worried the attack could draw the region closer to wider war. The United States faced its debate, with officials split on whether such bold actions might complicate continued support. For investors and businesses, the message was equally troubling. A city once seen as the secure center of Russia now looked fragile. Markets reacted with caution, and questions grew about the stability of a government unable to protect its capital. The strike became more than a local event. It forced governments, allies, and rivals to reconsider what the next stage of this conflict might bring. The night of the assault left Moscow changed. It was no longer a city that could claim distance from the front. Drones had crossed that boundary and proved that no wall of defenses was perfect. The explosions, the fires, and the silence in its airports were reminders that modern war is not confined to trenches or distant borders. It can appear without warning, even in the heart of a capital. For Russia, the strike shook pride. For the world, it raised a question. If Moscow is vulnerable, what city can truly call itself safe?